do it there. Fantastic. Well, brilliant. Great to see you again. Pins at the ready, I hope. Lots to get through. I'm just going to motor on. Through, if that's all right for the time being. Again, we've got the right size cohort here, even though we're down one in number. I'll keep an eye out for Barry, just in case he's having trouble getting through. Excuse me. Summing up on last week, we talked about two kinds of lead generation, passive and active. We talked about customer journey, that three-phase approach: attract, convert, retain, and that goes for fundraising and or business as well. Don't take your channels for granted. You've got to test over the period of time. I was reminded that when you Google a subject and it comes up with the various options, normally paid advertising first and the bottom, the arrow that points to this option, Google spent something like $2 million on what's called A/B testing to get to what do people respond most positively with. So sometimes you've just got to test, because it's also new these days, on what's working best. And actually, it's a really good time, and we're also going to meet Rebecca a little bit later on, just like we did with Marianne last week. So I won't steal too much thunder from that, but testing for what works best. We talked about KPIs, key performance indicators, on, here we go, here's Mary, on impressions, click-through ratios, ad scores for relevance, call to action, all of that stuff. This is just a reminder from last week, just in case you're wondering. And we also talked about analytics. We're coming on to that in a few minutes. That call to action, what do you want the customer or prospect or audience to say, do, or agree as a result of having seen your ad or your digital footprint, wherever it happens to be. And your social selling index, of course. Where are you now? Did you write that down? Did anyone write that down, or just consciously at least sort of take stock of what it was? Because it would be interesting in the next 2-3 months' time, doing what you're doing, to see how that's advancing. That would be interesting. Make it go. Then we talked about active lead generation, getting the right pitch for that particular company, because it can vary. 80-20 rule. 80% of it is core, it will stand still, but 20% of it you have to vary according to the corporate partner or the client or whomever it be. It's just vary it in accordance with their needs. Then the concept of upfront contracts, the dynamic of if I can do this, will you do that? If you give me 30 seconds, then that'll be the end of my pitch, and you can decide whether it's worth going forward. That whole thing, a contract between two parties, it's a really interesting dynamic. And then, of course, confirming next steps, getting a commitment to meet, or whether you have a Zoom call, or even actually, we're just never going to work. We're not right for each other. We're all over 18. Let's kind of move on. And the whole half-life of leads. If you get a Facebook lead come in for your business, it's probably got a half-life. You have to respond pretty quickly. Don't allow someone to message you at 8 in the morning, but you don't get to it until 5 at night. Because if that was me, I would think, well, these people really aren't on the game. That's something else. On the ball. That could have been really awkward. Anyway, so these people really aren't on the ball. Then they're not on their game. That's what I was trying to say. Honest, and they don't really want my business. Okay, right. So Rebecca's going to join us in about 20 or so minutes, but it's not an appointment. It's just when she gets the chance to come in. We'll be talking about today's agenda, though, will be understanding client needs, what they really want, and how we can use communications to demonstrate our expertise. So rather than, for instance, I've been in B2B sales 35 years, let me kind of sit in front of you and ask you really insightful questions about your business or about your primary school children that have development needs, and I'll demonstrate my expertise in this area almost by osmosis, by the great questions that I'm asking. So, and then I'll be showing you a bad demonstration, so to speak. You'll understand why it's called that towards the end. I want to prioritize that because I think it's great. This is all about communications, this particular session. And then we'll have some questions to wrap up, of course. Just a reminder, you'll know this slide by now, but we've talked about value prop, go-to-market, lead gen. We are here doing deal qualification. So we've got an opportunity that's come to us somehow. Could have been via any of those channels, referral, whatever it is, but now we're going to qualify, is this customer right for us? Are we right for this potential customer? And then we're going to talk to, next week, we'll talk about pursuit strategy, those for very large or strategic. Strategic doesn't have to be big, just has to be in sort of different enough that you need to think a little bit more than an average bread and butter kind of deal. So that's why we have pursuit strategies. Then we'll learn about negotiating close, which is one of my favorite sessions, and then how to maximize yield, how to get your existing clients spending more money with you, how strategies to do that. Okay, so my thoughts on this phase is this might actually be the first time right up until now, you might have had someone interested in buying your services or your products and you didn't even know it. And that's kind of a cool concept because, you know, really not that many years ago, the only time you knew someone wanted to buy your product is when I phoned you up and cold called you, or something like, we met at a trade or exhibition show. It's not like that now because with social media, websites, all of that, we can be considering buying your services or donating to your charity, even without you knowing it. And that's a really interesting concept. And that's why data is so important. It's kind of the invisible salesperson, the 12th man on the pitch, or 12th woman on the pitch, I beg your pardon. Okay, we're going to talk about best possible results. So if you're having a meeting or a phone call, most people, I don't know if you do this. So put your hands up if, when you're having a meeting or when you're going to make an important phone call, do you actually write down a goal of what you want to achieve on the call? Does anyone actually do that? Okay, not many people do. I think something like 3% do. Now, I'm not saying I do this every time, but if it's really important, like I did do it last week. I was on the phone to CEO of a 700 person organization that I wanted to talk to you about some sales training. And I have actually 2 points. I have what I call a best possible result. Man, if I could wave a magic wand, wouldn't it be great if they said, Keith, are you free to come in and present to my board next week? That might be the best possible result. And I need to be prepared for that outcome in case it happens. And then I have a minimum acceptable result. On the off chance, I mean, it's not that often that a CEO will say, yeah, absolutely, come and see me next week. It does happen, but then I have a minimum acceptable result, which is if I can't get anywhere on that call with that person, can we agree to stay in touch? Can we agree that I can put them on my mailing list? Can we agree will he refer me to someone else in his or her organization that I can keep in day-to-day touch with? A minimum acceptable result, assuming, of course, I want to actually, I've already made the decision that I really want to deal with that organization and I want to learn more about them and I want to tell them more about us, assuming I've made that decision. So that's the minimum acceptable result. It kind of keeps you focused. And then there's a discovery process. We want to know more about them. Why do you want to invest with us? And an investment could be buying our services. It could be an investment in our charity. It could be an investment in cyber. Why do you want to do that? And why is a really important question. It's kind of raw, so you have to be careful about asking why. It can appear patronizing, and it can be a petulant child. He was, why can I not have an ice cream? Reminds me back to that stage. So just be careful how you ask that question, but that's what you're trying to discover. That's why I call it discovery phase. And then monetizing. And I'll just give you an example of what I mean by monetizing. And it's not always easy to do in services, and especially with charities. So this does take a bit of thinking about, but I hope you get the concept at least, is that back in the day when I sold technology to investment banks, which actually wasn't that long ago, we talked about something called high frequency trading. So an investment bank, with all the resources that they've got at their hands, it benefits them if they've got the fastest network, the fastest equipment, so they can get in, they can do a trade, they can get back out again. And even though that might only take milliseconds, it can be millions of dollars on the end of that. And so the ability to, now I present an extreme example because it's easier to perhaps comprehend. We can put a financial value on the inability of them to do that. It's costing them millions of dollars in lost revenue not to be able to do that, so it's worth making the investment case. Perhaps a more day-to-day example would be, I've got a big problem with sickness absence in my organization. Okay, well, why is that a problem? And so, for instance, a client I was working with who sells HR software a few months ago talked about a client she was working with where they had the average number of sick days was 8 in their organization every year, public sector organization. And how much is that in terms of lost productivity? It's quite hard to measure productivity in the public sector, but it's 8 days times, let's say, 700 employees. And or thereabouts, that's 5,600 days. You could probably put a number on that of, well, 5,600 days times, and that's worth tens of thousands of pounds anyway in lost productivity. So there is a financial incentive for the customer to do something about that. You should always talk about, there's a do nothing option. What happens if you do nothing? You have to present that. So if you've got a cyber customer, Demiji, where you've identified a gap in their protection, if you like, then to monetize the value of that gap or the cost of that gap, if that risk comes to be realized, that's where you want to point. It's almost like they've got a scratch and you're going to itch it, or you're going to probe around. You're really going to understand how much that hurts. In other words, will they invest money with you for your solution, whatever that happens to be? Now, for Sarah, I have been thinking about this. This is not easy because your clients who buy on a different basis for your exclusive designs, they buy, I don't even want to call it aspiration, but they buy the football equivalent of glory, frankly. You want to help them win the FA Cup for their particular home or purchase. That's what they want. They want beauty. They want all those things that you stand for. So to monetize the problem is not easy, but you can contextualize the problem or the opportunity, if you like, in terms of your competition. Certainly, I've got to believe you're the best of the best at doing what you do. And if you come in with that assumption, then you can monetize that problem. And also monetizing a problem isn't necessarily just a point in time thing. It's immediate. If your client says, I'm not going to buy your cyber stuff because I haven't got the budget this quarter, they are, until they buy that software, whether it be from you or from someone else, they're running that risk all the time. So your responsibility is to really land the point in their mind that they're running that risk, which is probably an unacceptable risk to the board, because that's who's responsible for security of the firm, physical and IP, and internet-related security. So your responsibility is to really drive that point home by monetizing. Why have you got this problem? So very often problems are symptoms of other problems. So going back to the sickness absence, why are your people off sick? Are there any patterns to it? Are there, you know, because I always come from the point of people want to do the best for their other people. I think that's a reasonable starting point. So why are there 8 days of sick every year? So going through a process of understanding why that is, and can often, it's a low number of people, frankly, swinging the lead in that particular situation, skewing the numbers, and but you still end up with 8 days per sick per capita for every year. But actually, it turns out it's 3 or 4 people that have been off, in one case 2 years unpaid, but there's still headcount on the firm, all sorts of other things. So digging below that surface, asking those questions, that signifies to the person the other side of the table that you really know what you're talking about. You are an expert in this area, and that fosters trust, and that, assuming you've done all the other jobs well, that creates desire to engage with you and your products and what you stand for. Okay, so the fear of loss is greater than the desire for gain. I think there's plenty of research out which confirms that for the most part. And the example I would tend to use there is going concern. It's certainly for investment banks. If you talk to them about the risk that they run by not being able to trade anymore, losing what they already have, losing those customers, those clients, that revenue that they've already got, and that reputation, they're probably going to spend more to defend that than they will to build another business, build another revenue line. So you need to put that in your particular worlds. The fear of loss of what they've already got is almost certainly greater than the desire for gain. Now, I'm very happy to take a challenge on that. If Barry, in your world, or Abby, or Jane, if you want to contextualize that and come in and challenge me, but I believe that to be the case, or you want to reflect on it and come at me a bit later on, that's absolutely fine. But I do believe that's the case. And no guessing. The one thing that drives me mad is when I find out people were guessing. Now, it's okay to guess, but what is not okay is to not tell your line manager, your client, that you're guessing. So you can make a reasonable assumption, because it may not be possible to know the full answer, but you've got to say, my educated guess is this is what's happening. What's not acceptable is just to guess without telling anyone else. It's just a guess. Otherwise, they're basing their whole business case on a guess, which is poor. Okay, right. Going through all of this, and I've probably spent far too long on that particular slide. Just so happens that sometimes you will get a phone call, a Facebook message, WhatsApp, whatever it is, with someone who doesn't want to go through all that song and dance routine. They just want to buy what you sell. So look out for the buying signs where they don't want to go through all that routine. And I had this, and mea culpa. I worked with someone a couple of years ago who was in the business of social media. They were a digital person, really good at what they did. I thought I'd given them a really good briefing on a client call and all the rest of it. And the client got really interested. And so I said to the guy, David, come on the call with me. They're ready to buy. We're going to tell them what to do, what we're going to do for her money. And the very first thing, David, love him, got on the line and said, tell me all about your business. And it was like puncturing a balloon. I'd obviously not reinforced that thought in their minds. and they went through the whole, we wanted to embark on the whole rigmarole again, and the client, the other side of the phone, it was a phone conference call at the time, and it totally destroyed the moment, and we lost that client, and that was my fault because I didn't prep them enough. But there are times, so I'd set it up so that they were ready to buy, and there are times when people are just ready to buy, ready to make that investment, and that's absolutely fine. But you need to look out for the signs that they're just ready to do that, and you can go straight to the bottom line, press hard, fifth copy's yours, and all of that. Okay, right. So we sort of referenced this: 70% of the time, people have already going to researched you in terms of what you do. They're going to build a picture of you, an estimation of you, even before they get to speak to you. They've already done their buying signals. Okay, so be aware that you can have a more advanced conversation than just building a relationship. You can, why have you come to us is a great question to ask. You might want to think about how you word that, but what is it you've seen on our website or on our social media that is, why have you phoned us today? What's on your mind? And that gets straight to the point. And don't put unnecessary barriers, i.e. go back to the beginning because that's what your process says. Tell me about your business. You didn't have to do that. You could have got straight into it and said, okay, what is it you're looking, this is what we're going to do for you. Is that okay? Also, and this is going to be different. I don't know if anyone's running an e-commerce, but if you're in the charity business, you've probably got a donate page. 70% of transactions are abandoned at the checkout stage. Do you have a process for emailing those people back, remarketing to them, rescuing that purchase or donation? Why did you abandon the checkout? Did your Wi-Fi drop out? Did whatever that happen? Do you go back and do that? You would not believe the number of companies, big, well-resourced companies, that don't have a process for that. So you need to be careful if you're doing any kind of online transactions at all. Monitor what's happening there, because that can be a fantastic revenue generator, just mopping up the spilt drink, so to speak. Okay, so communication is, I think, around and communication with transactions and abandoned baskets is still an example of communicating with the customer. So I think it happens when the other person understands. It's not just what you've been talking about. I've told you what to do, therefore you understand it. Communication happens when whatever I've said to Miji or Barry or Jane or Abby, they understand, and maybe if it's important enough, I get them to repeat it back. Or good luck with this one, if you're trying to explain something to me, when I can repeat it back to you in a way that is acceptable, then I've understood. So it's a two-way process. So communication happens when the other person understands. That could be an employee, a client, whomever it happens to be. Okay, so when you're meeting with your client,
Keith,
yeah,
sorry, I've just got a quick question.
Yeah.
Just about the checkout stage, where you say if people have kind of a system to get back in touch with people who might not have finished a purchase, is that only in the case of if they've actually got an account with you? Because how would it work in terms of GDPR? Say if they hadn't signed up, because you don't have the right to then contact them.
That is a great question. Now, do you know, I don't know the answer to that, Abby, but I do promise to get it for you. So yeah, GDPR, it's checkout basket. I.e., do you have permission to
kind of follow up with them? Yeah,
it's a great question. This is another thing we talked about, the context of putting barriers in the way. And I think it was up until fairly recently, John Lewis used to do this. They would let you go all the way through the process, and then at the very last moment, they would say, do you have an account with us? And if you didn't, you would have to sign up a form. So I don't know what their abandoned stats would be at that stage. They were pretty high. I would have thought, but I mean that would drive me mad if I know it drove Mrs. Roselle mad when we found out about it. So you've got to have an account to start with. So if that's happening a lot, maybe you should be asking much earlier in the process. Do you want to proceed as a guest, I think it's called, or do you want to start an account now, in which case when you come to sign it buy, then it's all very straightforward and all the rest of it. I had this direct experience once when I ran the call centers for NPower, and we had something like 300 call center agents, and we were getting a lot of calls that were 38, and you've been on the receiving end of any calls from a mobile phone provider or a big six energy provider. You may know all about this, but you go through 45 minutes of interrogation normally, and then at the last minute you find out, oh, because you're on a meter or you don't want to sign a direct debit, we can't deal with you, sorry about that. Well, wouldn't it be, that's a waste of our time, but it's also just be disrespectful to the client as well. So all I did was re-engineer their scripts so that those key, what I call gotcha kind of questions, we need the answer to be this, otherwise it's not worth proceeding. I got all those questions just brought back to the very beginning. Yes, build a minute or so of relationship first, but actually ask that killer question early and get no early so that you can disengage politely, respectfully, and move on. But Abby, I've noted your question, and I will get you an answer.
That's great.
To that.
Thank you.
Oh, it is Rebecca. Her daughter's been. Did anyone see that thing that went viral, by the way, about the Floridian judge and appearing as a cat on Zoom? Okay, right. Okay, so that was absolutely fantastic. All right. Rebecca Stringer, hello, how are you? Oh, is the audio coming through?
Yep, sorry, that was me, unmuted.
That's okay. Very welcome, Rebecca. Let me just come off of share a second so that we can see you. Do you want to say hi to everyone first? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lovely to meet you all. Well, first of all, thanks to Keith for inviting me to talk to you a little bit about digital analytics. So I've got, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and the clients that I've worked with, and then just give you a few pointers on what to track and how you can use digital data to back up your sales successes. So although I have got a slide deck, I don't want it to be death by PowerPoint. So if you have got any questions and just want to take it off piste, I'm more than happy to go with however it goes.
Thank you, Rebecca. Just give us a sense, if you would, just on your background, or do you want me to bring your shares up, your slides up straight away, and you talk you through your slides?
Yeah, I've actually, I cut them down a little bit because I went over it last night and I bored myself, so I cut a few bits out. So if I can share, and then I can just talk you through.
Yeah, sure. 1 second. Make you co-host. Yep. There we go. While you're doing that, by the way, I should have introduced Demiji, Sam, Joseph, Barry, Sarah, Jane, and Abby here as well. Sorry about that.
Lovely to meet you all.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I'll just pop you all down there. So basically, I just want to introduce you a little bit about myself. So I have an agency called Funnelmetrics, and Funnelmetrics is all about digital analytics consultancy. And basically what that means is, if you were to consider me to be like a digital accountant, so if you think about from your accountant, or if you're doing your own accounts, then you'd know what your annual spend on marketing for things are, what your cash flow was, what your turnover, what your profitability, what your tax planning, and all of those kind of like the financial numbers. And basically I help people understand their digital numbers and how they can then better improve their financial numbers based on the digital numbers. So I use a number of tools. So it tends to be for small businesses using tools like Google Analytics and the Google Suite, including Tag Manager and Data Studio. But I've also worked mainly at enterprise level. These are just some of the people that I've worked with, past and present, on more of Adobe, which is like more of a premium version of Google. So the first thing that I just want to talk about is what data you could use to support your sales. So if you think about the sales process and you think about what data could be available to you to either back up the conversation or to help you streamline your sales process and get more sales out at the end, whatever that be. So if you think about your social media data, so say for instance, you are posting regularly on whichever channel is appropriate for you. So for argument's sake, if we say LinkedIn and it's about lead generation, for instance, so your social media tends to be before people have engaged with your website, but there's still a load of information that you could gather off the back of that social media. And even if it's just things like how often you're posting. So if you're posting more frequently, are you then getting a representative engagement from the frequency of your posting? Does the time of day change how often people engage with you? Or do you get a better engagement at a weekend versus midweek, end of day versus morning, or whatever that is? And is there a particular time of day? And all of this is data that you can be collecting and learning and then honing about how you are posting and talking to your potential audience, as well as looking at what's the sort of language that you're using. And if you were to use a particular type of question or a particular type of content, does that increase your overall engagement? As well as looking at what your competitors are doing. And it's always worth bearing in mind that just because a competitor's doing something, it doesn't mean that it's working. So don't always just follow what your competitors are doing, but if there's a general sort of theme, it's worth trialing it potentially, but don't copy always, because it doesn't mean that it's working for them. So your social media, as I say, that's before people tend to get to your website. You've then got when people get to your website or your app. So using tools like Google Analytics is an absolutely amazing tool. It's a free tool that you stick on your website and immediately starts collecting a load of information about how people got to your website, what they've done when they got to your website, and that's purely from a navigation point of view. So the pages that they've seen, where they entered the site, so what the landing pages are and how the landing pages are working, which I think is something that you were talking about in the last session in terms of the customer journey, what devices they're using. And there's a load of content that you can use in there to back up your sales proposition. I'm going to talk a little bit more about enhanced tracking with web analytics in a second. So in terms of a sales team, so it may be that you have a sales team or you're outsourcing a sales support, or it's yourself. And if you think about what you're talking to, either your existing customers or you're talking to potential customers, and there's a whole load of information that you can be collecting and tracking, even if it's just in a you know, on a note to yourself, and there's particular language that your customers or potential customers are using, or there's particular barriers to entry or objection handling that you're having to deal with while you're talking to those people. And take all of that data, and then you can use that data within your actual sales strategy. So are there FAQs that you could put on your website that answer these objections? Is there content and posts that you could use within your marketing that again answers these objections to make the whole sales cycle better. And if you kind of think about there's the whole sort of argument of, does sales lead marketing or does marketing lead sales? And actually the two need to work hand in hand, because the marketing should back up the sales journey and the sales conversation, and the marketing is what is done to back up that sales conversation. So there's loads of things that you can also pick up from actually the talking to the end customers, and that could be post-sale as well. So your CRM, so your customer relationship management, so this is your database. So if you think, if again we take it from a lead generation point of view, so you have done some marketing, you've driven visitors onto your website, they've then filled in a contact form, and that detail is then into your customer relationship management software. So you've got a new contact. That doesn't mean you've got a new customer, it means you've got a new contact when you start looking at lead generation. So think about the journey then from how long has it taken you to get that contact? Where did they come from? How much has it cost you to get that contact in the first place? And then once you've got that contact, how long is it then taking you to nurture from a contact to be a customer? And if you can understand that process, and then you can really start to understand what are the best type of customers, what do they look like, what would their persona be, how did you get them, and how can I get more of those? So rather than thinking, right, I'm going to talk to everybody and I'm just going to get loads of leads, think about the quality of the leads that you're driving and where you get those leads from, and follow those and have a bit more of a sniper approach to getting those people, as opposed to I'm just going to talk to everybody, because you can't. Be more targeted. The last thing, I mean, these are obviously just a few ways of collecting data, but I mean, footfall isn't something that we have a lot of at the moment in the current climate, obviously. But if you were thinking that you did a seminar or an event, or if you actually had a physical presence in terms of a shop or an office or something like that, and again, think about the effort that you've put in your marketing to drive your sales message, and then how many more people are talking to you in terms of coming into a physical place. And again, that could be something as simple as just doing a tally. But if you know you spend more money on marketing, for instance, does that have an absolute knock-on effect to your footfall? Because not everything can be monitored digitally, but that you can still count people. Does that all make sense? Yeah, perfect. So I want to talk a little bit more about web analytics, because Google Analytics can be so powerful and it can give you so much more data than you get for free. So I don't know if you know, but when you put a snippet of code, so it's just a little bit of code onto your website, Google Analytics automatically starts to capture a load of things. So where people came from in terms of the marketing effort. So did they come through social media or paid search, or have they come directly to your site, for instance? What devices are they using? What languages, what country? You can really start to understand where this traffic's coming from, and really honing into it. The downside of Google Analytics is, or the opportunity within it, as I should say, is that it really needs to be set up specifically for your business to get the absolute best value from it. As standard, everything is just based on the fact that somebody has seen a page. What it doesn't show you is that they've clicked on a button, they've downloaded something, they've watched some content, they've scrolled down, or whatever it is. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about what the opportunity is to enhance your tracking in Google Analytics. And it's quite simple to do if you know how, but I'm happy to pick up any questions of that as we go through, or after the session. So the first thing to think about is, what is the success of your business? So what are the things that are important for you to measure? And also think about your website. What are you spending time doing? And can you measure whether there's a return on investment from you doing those things? So I'm just going to go through a few examples. So page scroll. So as we are viewing more website nowadays from a mobile device, you're actually scrolling further and further and further down. So the pages are much longer than they were traditionally. So you have your page on your website. If all of your calls to action are down at the bottom of your page and nobody's ever seeing them, nobody's ever going to get, nobody's going to be able to click on them if they don't see them. How do you know that unless you start tracking how far people are scrolling down your page? So if you think, 50% of people only get to 50% of the page, consider everything that is then below 50%, and is it in the right place? Is there any way you could repurpose it? Does it make sense to move it further above, or does it need to actually be on a separate page altogether? The same as if you're creating blog posts. So you may have some absolutely phenomenal blog posts, but again, if people aren't reading to the bottom of them, it begs the question of, should it be one long blog post? And, obviously the copy and the content of that blog is really important because that will contribute to your organic search. But you could actually split it into maybe 2 or 3 posts as opposed to it just being one big post. The knock-on effect of that is that you can then do marketing around the separate posts rather than it just being on the one post. So again, if you're not tracking it, you can't measure its performance. When you look at your contact methods, so whether it's lead generation, whatever the website's about, if you have contact forms, then you want to make sure that you're tracking that that form has been submitted. So it could be that a contact form goes to a thank you page. So that's quite easy to understand how many people have viewed a page because you'll know what the page name is. But if you also think, again, more people looking at websites on a mobile device, and particularly if you're driving traffic to your website through social media, they are more likely to click on a telephone link or an email link than actually go through and fill out a form. So if you're not tracking those links, you don't know whether your activity is working. And I'll tell you a little bit more details in a case study in a little while, just about a particular instance of that. Your site search, so you've spent the time and money driving people onto your website, and if you've got a free text search on your site that just allows people to search freely on your site, if you're understanding what those people are searching for, although the data will only be very limited from the websites that I've worked on, it's generally about 1% of people will make a free search on a site. But actually, although it's only around 1%, some of that information is absolute gold dust because it could show you new opportunities. So if every search, although it be 1%, is always looking for a similar thing, could that be an opportunity for you to pivot or offer a new service? Could it also be that your customers are using totally different language to the language that you're using? So, if you're selling widgets, but your customers call them something else, they're never going to find you if you call them widgets and they call them something else. So although, yeah, it's a small percentage, it's worth keeping an eye on what people are searching for on your site. Your CTA, so this is your calls to action. So if you think about your own website and think about the buttons and the links that you have, if you understand what drives success, so how many people contact you or buy from you or donate or whatever it is, and which of those calls to action drives the strongest click-through, again, you're really getting to understand what drivers and what the language is and what people are understanding across your site. And then video consumption. In a similar way to understanding how far people are scrolling down the page, you might be spending time and money creating, again, beautiful video content on your website. And say, for instance, those videos are on average 3 minutes long, but people are only ever getting to the first 2 minutes and then not watching any further. It begs the question that your videos are too long. Because if you also think that if you have long videos, that's a large file, that's going to slow your website down in the first place and tend to put people off. So if you know not only which videos are being viewed, to what percentage those videos are being viewed, and which pages are driving people to view that content, again, this will all help you to create better content to get across your message. And then the last thing, although this obviously isn't a full list, document download. So if you're doing white papers, case studies, downloadable PDFs, brochures, whatever it is, again, if you're spending time creating those things, then you want to know how many people are downloading them and potentially reading them. So again, these are all measures. So when you think about your business, think about all of the component parts that you have to build up your website in your business, and then think about how are you measuring whether they're working or not? Because if it's worth you spending time creating these things, then it's definitely worth knowing whether they're working for you. And if they're not, then you can put your time and effort into something else. So if you don't measure, you can't improve. So just think about what you can measure and how you can improve that. So I want to move on to talk about the conversion funnel, and I hope this isn't too sort of theoretical, but it's just a concept that as business owners, just some of the key numbers to understand in the sales journey. So your conversion funnel, I guess it's a similar sort of approach to as you are nurturing a sale. Whereas I'm purely in this instance talking about the conversion funnel from somebody on your website, but you could also take this conversion funnel across other aspects of your business. So if you think that, can you see my mouse? Yeah. If you think that the top of the funnel here would be 100% of your traffic getting to your website, and as the funnel comes down to them taking an action, you're moving from attention through to interest, then into desire, and then into action. So you're actually giving them more information and giving them the want and need to actually purchase from you, register from you, donate, or whatever the website is about. If you then think about the conversion, so the website conversion is the number that as a business owner you should hang your hat on. This is such an important number because it's giving you a quality score of the traffic that you're driving to your site and then how you're then converting that. So how much money you're spending at the top and how many leads or sales or whatever it is that you're getting out at the bottom. So your website conversion is a macro conversion. So this is the main purpose of your website. You also have these micro conversions, which when we were just talking, or when I was just talking earlier about the things that you could track on your website to show engagement, then these are the micro conversions. So these are other conversions that happen through the journey that contribute to your overall conversion. Does that make sense? Yeah. The scary number is that on average, only 1%, which sounds a very small amount, 1% would be your aim for a website conversion. So as the scary thing is that you've lost potentially 99% of the traffic that you drive to your site are never going to do what you want them to do in terms of the overall conversion. But they might be doing some of these other things as well. But the idea is to understand your own conversion and then work on to improve it. So either driving better quality traffic or changing the website over time so that you over time lose less of this traffic and you get a conversion over time. And I just wanted to just show a few examples of different types of websites and the different micro conversions and the macro conversions of those as well. So for lead generations, it's all about getting contacts. For e-commerce, it's about making a purchase. For content, so say for publications or whatever, they want subscribers. And charities, although I've put about donations here, it could also be about engagement of the audience. And just to give you just a bit of an idea of the various process, I mean, we all buy online, so we know that once you've searched for a product, you get a list of products. You then look at an individual product to a product page. From that, add to cart, checkout, and purchase. So these are all the fallouts of an e-commerce site. Does that make sense in terms of conversions? Yeah, so think about your business. make sure you understand what your overall conversion is, and then make sure you understand what the key elements are to drive that overall conversion.
Rebecca, would you mind if I asked a quick question on that, please?
No, absolutely.
Because I think that one slide, sort of, if we can all get to master our understanding of how that slide maps to our businesses, that's a fantastic takeaway. How do you decide what each stage should be? How does one get to make that decision, or come up with that kind of sequencing to encourage or incentivize getting to the next stage? Or is that too big a question to ask?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of business. So, I mean, is there a particular business that you want to take as an example?
Yeah, Sarah Teng's business, maybe. That would be selfish of me to say mine, so I'll say Sarah's.
Okay, so Sarah's business is
Space 8. Sorry, I'm talking to you, Sarah. Come off of mute.
My business is Space 8 Design. It's a luxury interior design service. I work with property developers and some private clients.
okay. So your website, is that about generating leads predominantly?
It's supposed to be.
Yes. Okay. So in terms of the lead generation, so there'll be various stages. So I guess you have some kind of gallery.
Yeah.
So if you understand, so you've got to think about the mentality and taking people through the journey on the website. So they've come to your website. So whether that's from you speaking to them first and then them doing their research, or you've driven that traffic onto your website. So they're going to want to know things like, so if you have a page of testimonials, for instance, they're starting to get that backing about the work that you've done. Gallery views, so which images, so if you have a track of everybody who looks at a gallery image, for instance, and which are the most popular galleries. So if you know that offices, for instance, within a particular location have got the highest views, and then that leads more people to contact you, then there's actions that you can take off the back of it. So it's either, right, I know what the most popular is, but then is it the most popular because that's the most content of that? Do I need to start creating more content around the other work that you've done, or in areas where you're wanting to find more leads, for instance? So and then the fact that you'll have because it's about contacting, you'll want to make sure that all of your contact links are tracked. So it's not just forms. You want to make sure that telephone number links and email links are also tracked. And just because somebody has clicked on an email and just because somebody has clicked on a phone link, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've made the call or they've sent the email, but it's an indication. And that's a great indication that if you know that if you've spent more money on a particular route to market, so your particular marketing, and then that's increased the number of people who have then phoned or emailed, then it's a great measure. So, or whether there's brochures on there, or if you were doing some kind of, I don't know, colour schema, for instance, and people wanted to download your colours, you know, whatever it is. If you're creating this content, just make sure that you're tracking it.
Thank you. What's the timeline normally for these contents that you can see the results?
It depends how much traffic you've got, and you don't have to have a lot of traffic. It's about what's the overall trend over time. So once you put the tracking on, you'd want to give it at least a month, start collecting the data. And also think about what your marketing activity has been over that period. And if you can, benchmark your website before you start spending more money. So if you know, So you've got your overall conversion funnel. So we know what the overall conversion is. So say, for instance, we then break this down. So imagine sort of lines coming down, which are the individual marketing sources. So it could be, for instance, that social media, so say we have Facebook. So Facebook could potentially never convert, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily stop doing Facebook because it plays a part. Maybe it's more about social engagement or whatever it is. It could be that email converts better or whatever, but you'll have better converting marketing activity that contribute to the 1%. Does that make sense? That was quite badly explained.
Thank you very much.
I put you on the spot there, Rebecca. You came through with flying colours, so thank you for that. Please carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions on there on anybody's individual websites or the purpose? No? Okay. I just want to take you through a couple of case studies of 3 clients that I've worked with, just to show the value of the data and how it's improved their processes. So the first one is a electronic data interchange company. So they basically connect online retail, online sellers to like the Sainsbury's and various marketplaces. So they have these products, which are their standard products. And then they have this, they call it a freedom calculator, which is the facility for potential customers to go on and work out exactly how many partners and what they want to choose and cherry pick what the ideal package would be for them. So when I started working with Transalis, they had this thing, but they weren't tracking how it was being used at all. So once we put some tracking, we basically, I worked with their developers so that we could track what the most popular selections were and how many trading partners and everything else like that. By doing that, they then better understood what their customer needs was. And as a result, this EDI freedom here, they could put their base level in terms of their initial offering up by 20%, which is not insignificant. And you also think that, okay, so their initial offering wasn't reaching what the actual basics were. So they could have potentially lost customers by saying they don't give me what I need, whereas now they have a much better offering to their customers. And they wouldn't have known that if they weren't tracking just a simple thing as a calculator. So if you think again on your own website, if you have searches or search filters or blog tags or whatever they are, your category tags, understand them and understand what people are using and looking for. The second one is a housing association that I work with. So they've got a status, and historically they have had a very sort of dictatorial senior management team and an incredibly busy marketing team who are always at sprint. They never come up for breath. And when their dictatorial team or their senior management team come and say, right, we need this piece of content, historically they'd just go, yeah, we'll do it. Whereas now they understand more about what their audience are wanting, more about the forms that they have, more about how they're searching and what the content is. And as a result of that, they've been able to move and push back to the senior team to go, okay, yeah, I understand that that piece of content is important. However, the data is saying that the audience need more of support with how to pay my rent over COVID or whatever it is, and really listening to the audience rather than just following a shiny thing or bloke down pub had that conversation. Just so use the data to back up and use it to make the decisions rather than, oh, right, somebody said about this thing, I should go and do it. It's not always the best thing to do, and it'll help you really focus. The third example, so this is the last one I'm just going to talk about quickly, is an independent mortgage advisor based in the Midlands. So Equity Select have a website, and 50% of the traffic that was coming to their website was coming from America. Now, they can't sell mortgages in America, and it was coming because there was a company in America called Select Equity rather than Equity Select. So the first thing that I did for them is look at their data and say, right, okay, you can't sell mortgages within the States. You're a UK only proposition. So let's give you a view of your data that is UK only. It's still important to understand the whole in case you do some activity and you start getting engagement in the States, for instance. But the first thing that we did is look at just removing America and just having a UK only view. So from then, it was looking at, so what are then people doing on your website? You've got loads of forms, of people filling in those forms. Oh, you've also got these telephone links and email links in the header of your website. Let's track those and see what's happening. So this was basically the conversion funnel for Equity Select, so 0.2%. So as I said earlier, a targeted website conversion would be about 1%. So 0.2 is pretty appalling, but this is 50% of that is America. So just getting rid of America is taking his conversion level up to 1.2%, which is a good conversion. But then by tracking the clicks on his telephone links and his email links, that then took their conversion without doing anything else up to 3.6%. So it's important to note that the business owner was about to pull all of his social media activity because he didn't think it was working because nobody was filling in forms. Of course they're not. They're coming from social media and they're using a mobile device. So they're just going to phone or they're just going to email. So it just shows the importance of tracking everything and thinking about the behaviour rather than I've got my website, it works, but does it work for the consumer or does it work for you? And that was it. It's a little bit of a whistle-stop tour. It's a big subject to cover in 15, 20 minutes, but has anybody got any questions or anything?
Rebecca, first of all, thank you very much indeed. That was fantastic. I would encourage anyone, while we've got someone like Rebecca with us, to by all means fire in some questions.
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for that. That was really, really good, really interesting. I just wanted to ask you a question about website analytics. And was I correct in thinking that you suggested that there were other ways of measuring other than just Google Analytics? Because my experience with Google Analytics has been really powerful, but I used to find it crashed on a regular basis when I was trying to get data going back a period of time more than the 7 days it was just showing on the sort of title screen, which is really frustrating because actually the data was really, really interesting. And I think also, like you said, about how you can set it so it can measure activities on a page as well, which was really good. We could measure what resources that we had that were free on the website that had been downloaded, which was really powerful. But anytime I tried to track back further than about 7 days, it crashed. So was there any other way of doing it? I mean, was there an Adobe product that you showed on your first screen? Was I right in thinking that?
Yeah, so Adobe tends to be at an enterprise level. Google Analytics is a fantastic tool. And if it is crashing for you, then it's worth thinking about what is the data sets that you're looking at. And if you're always looking at the same data points, then it's worth getting dashboards set up. So you can either set those up in Google Analytics themselves, but they can be a bit clunky. There's a tool called Google Data Studio, which you can pull in all of the data from Google Analytics, and you can also link in like Search Console data, which is your organic data. And not only can you put your dashboard on brand, you can put annotations, you can put images in there. And from many small businesses that I have worked with, what's tended to happen when we use a standard dashboard in Google Analytics is that they say, yeah, all makes sense. And then 6 months later, the question comes up of how's it all going? Well, that number, I can't remember if you said it was good or bad, so I just stopped looking at it, which absolutely breaks my heart, because the answers are in the data as long as you're looking at them and you understand them. So using something like Google Data Studio, you can really present the data in a way that you understand it, and you could put annotations. So something, for instance, like, so say for instance, you're sharing it to a wider audience. It's on brand, you're more likely to look at it. You can then change the design of it, so you're more likely to share it. You can add your annotations, and you can also add graphics, which will prompt you on what some of the data means. So if you are looking at the same data sets regularly, and you can also compare historic data either to the previous period or the previous year as well, so you can get trends in there. But yeah, I'd really recommend using Google Data Studio.
Brilliant, thank you.
I think so, just on top of that as well, so if you think about keyword research, so if you're doing sort of organic keyword research, there's some brilliant tools. So one of them is called SEMrush, so SEMrush, and there's one called Moz as well. And one of the great things that I recommend within SEMrush, for instance, is, say for instance you've got some target keywords, and you're going to start creating a load of content around those keywords. In SEMrush, you can get a score of the difficulty rating of those keywords, and it's rated between 1 and 100. If anything is, I think, above 60, it's going to be really difficult for you to ever rank for those keywords. So it makes sense to look at different keywords and ones that you're going to rank for, rather than trying to chase something for the big boys. And also within those tools, you can do competitor research and have a look at keywords that your competitors are using that you are not using. So it really helps you with any gap analysis. But again, just because the competitor's doing it doesn't mean it's working.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Just very quickly as well, is SEMrush and Moz, are they free?
There is a free version. There's a free version of SEMrush, yes. It limits you to, I think, 3 reports a day or something like that. But it's worth just having a nosy. I think the entry level is something like £99 a month, I think. But yeah, I mean, the free version, just to have a look around and get some benchmarking, is worth having a go at.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Fantastic. Okay.
Sorry, can I touch up on that, please?
Yeah.
When you mentioned the keyword search, I was told by one of the staff, we need to look out for the number 10, under 10.
Okay.
Yeah, I was not sure if that's the right direction we should go, because you mentioned the difficulty level is 1 to 100.
Yeah, that's within SEMrush.
Okay.
So it depends which tool they're looking at.
It's called the Scoffler.
Don't know.
I forgot about the website. It's £25 a month,
Okay.
I believe. Yeah. So what's the indication of these numbers?
Up to 10. I'd need to know which the tool is.
Okay.
So I've just realised I've got my daughter's name on here. She's been on Zoom today, so yeah, I'm not Mabel.
Or a cat. Yeah.
So yeah, it depends which tool it is, but so you've got your difficulty ratings. You've got your impressions through to clicks. So it depends,
Okay.
which tool it is and what it is that you're looking at.
Rebecca, can I respectfully suggest that if there are any other questions related to your subject, if I could kind of collect them afterwards,
Yeah, of course.
and perhaps we have a choice. Perhaps I can invite you just to respond to them, or we can have a one-to-one catch up. I'll record it and then blast it out. What I'm not going to do though is, clearly, I hope everyone else on the call will realise this is really valuable information that Rebecca normally charges a lot of money for, but she's been kind enough to come on the program with us. So I'd like to not put that in the public, but keep the IP between ourselves. If that would find a way of doing that, that's effective and productive for everyone. But Rebecca, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
No problem.
It's a really important subject, and I'm still trying to get my head around all of this, as you can imagine, too. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and best of luck, everybody.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thanks
Thank you.
for inviting me on.
Thanks, Mabel, for allowing us to use the system as well. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome. Take care. Alrighty. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, here we go. Let's go. Let's go with. Does anyone want a 2-minute break just to get up and stretch, or glass of water or anything like that? Or are you okay motoring straight on? I'm hearing motor straight on. Okay, is that okay? All right, brilliant. Thank you very much. All right, so now that took a little bit more time, if I'm absolutely honest, than perhaps I was expecting. So I'm going to miss out some slides and focus on the major ones, because I do want to respect our time until half 5. So for me, and I used this slide to people of all ages and probably loads of times, but sometimes until, you know, I'm blue in the face, just because that was a fantastic line that I wrote down, that Rebecca said, just because your competitors are doing it doesn't mean it works. And I thought that's really interesting. I've written it down, but also just because you've said something, it doesn't mean the other person has understood it. And I think this is particular if you're not that familiar with the other side. So it could be a client, or a student, or a service user, or anything like that. So just because you've said something, you've said it the way you understand it, mainly. It doesn't necessarily mean the other person has understood it. And people have different preferences when it comes to digesting information. Some people love email. I don't. Some people love video. I do. And some people like reading a PDF document. So sometimes it's a matter of, you know, this testing, experimenting to get the right level of communication. So communication happens when the other person understands. And so how do you measure when the other person is understanding what you're telling them? Is when they're responding in the way that you're hoping they would respond. Going to the next phase of the conversion funnel would be one of those one of those measures, if you like, that they're understanding that they are amenable to those messages. They're getting ready to buy, in other words. That was the point of that. Okay, so we're in a meeting. Okay, so all meetings for me, customer meetings, whatever meetings, are all based around these things, which is, what do you want when you're having a meeting? What do you want the other party, the other person or people to say, do, or agree? What do you, as a result of you having the call or the meeting or the coffee or whatever happens to you, what do you want the other people to say, do, or agree? Or to put that another way, in Canary Wharf speak, would be what, so what, now what? So what is the issue we're trying to resolve? Why are we here today? So what? What's the implication for the business? And now what? Now that we've identified that, what are we going to do about it? And of course, the answer to now what could be anything from nothing, but we've noted the impact, to another range of actions. But the important thing is that there is an agreed set of actions come the outcome of that meeting. So if you go to every customer meeting with that in mind, you will impress the socks off them, because they won't have come across that with everyone else. Some people, you go along and actually you've just had tea and biscuits, nothing really has happened, and I've been may have guessed, I've been to plenty of those over my years, but it's frustrating. At the end of the day, it's your time. We've all got the same 24 hours of a day, and it's how productive and how effective we use that time, which is going to dictate the success or otherwise of our business and those outcomes. Anyway, so different kinds of communication. Now, I did show this earlier on in the week for those that are able to get on that call, but Meridian chart, only 7% of the communication between me and you and vice versa is the words that I've actually spoken. The other 93%, which we call non-verbal clues, are a combination of voice and tone and body language. Remember, this is all about communicating, and data is a form of communications, but human-to-human communication is a really, really big part of that as well. So, you know, it's broadly verbal and non-verbal communication. Amongst the greatest of all these skills, I believe, is listening. Ability to listen properly, and most people are probably aware of that already, but very few. Listening is a skill. It's not just a matter of being quiet when the other person is talking. Anyway, I've already said that, and there's much more than that, and we're about to find that out. Okay, so on listening, so it's the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages in the communication process. I believe that listening is the key to all effective communication, and without the ability to listen effectively, messages are very easily misunderstood. And I am reminded of that old World War I scenario where the communications came out from central office of send reinforcements, we attack at dawn, send reinforcements, something like that. And that was kind of at the beginning of the chain. At the end of the chain, on the front line where the message was eventually received, was send 3 and 4 points, we're going to a dance. That's how it was evidently received, because the message that you give is diluted to the next person, diluted to the next. That actually happened. And of course, there was a terrible massacre the next day, and the reinforcements didn't get there. And that's a terrible example, but it's a real life example about how messages are wrongly interpreted, misunderstood, and all of that. Okay, Simon. Okay, yeah. So many sales or business people think listening is just being quiet, waiting for the other person to stop their infernal talking so you can tell them how brilliant you are. You would not believe how many salespeople I come across that are still like that. That's a very 1980s way of selling, and they jump in as soon as possible with yet more of their features in their product. Well, people don't care about features. We've already told you about that. They care about benefits, how doing what you do will benefit their lives. That's what they care about. So we need to understand that. Okay, right. So if you listen too much, and I have made this mistake myself for a long time before. It was probably 15 years out of my 30 years in sales that before I realized listening is much more than just being quiet. I was listening probably 90% of the time, only talking 10% of the time, and I was reasonably successful in doing my number, which is the measure of all salespeople. I've been anywhere from 90% to 1,700%, but I was listening too much. I think the ideal these days, the ideal listening to talking ratio is probably 40% talking, 60% listening. And when you're talking, you're adding value. It's not just about, isn't it lovely weather? It's about insight into their business, about insight into their corporate social responsibility strategy, and how you can get them over the line in terms of investing with you. So if you listen too much, you're effectively a counselor, or a coach maybe. And there are some benefits to that, but actually if you're in business, you want them to get people spending money with you at some stage. So there's got to be a more equal relationship than just listening at all. Okay, why questions really important. It's not necessarily for the questions, it's for the answers that they reveal, because that's the gold dust. That's what you get inside your client's head, and or heart, even better, and you understand what they're really thinking and what they really want to buy, and you can deliver to that. And if you master the art of asking the right questions in the right way so that you receive the right information, do it better than your competitors, that will put you in pole position without needing to be aggressive, without needing to be overly assertive, or any of those things which are unpalatable to the sales profession, which is why sales has got the poor reputation that it does. Okay, right. So some great questions to ask will be, why do people buy from you? This is a rhetorical question that you need to ask yourself. I had a fantastic lesson fairly early on in my career with what's now HP, Hewlett Packard. People buy whatever it is you're selling based on two principal things, which is, do they trust you? Have you got the right price? It doesn't mean you're the cheapest, it doesn't mean you're the most expensive. Do they trust you to do what they need you to do? And have you got approximately the right price? Now, there's loads of stuff and activity that goes into creating that trust and getting what's called the price to win. Loads of stuff that goes into that, which is why we're learning these 7 modules. If it all came down to that, we could have left ages ago, but that's where we are. Trust, price. Okay, right. So open and closed questions. And does anyone know, let me just ask you guys this, come off of me if you would like to. Would anyone like to give an example of what they think an open or a closed question is?
What's your favorite food? That's open.
Ben and Jerry is the answer.
Do you like Ben and Jerry's? That's a closed one.
That's fantastic. Yeah, really love Ben. Thank you for asking. Baked Alaska is the 8th wonder of the world. But anyway, but those, okay, so those are great examples of open or closed questions. Anyone else want to fire in with anything relevant? If not, I'll just kind of move on. Okay, right, thank you, that was excellent. Right, so demonstrate ability or expertise by, so rather than telling people I'm brilliant at designing kitchens or interior design, or I take loads of people off the street, young people off the street, or whatever it happens to be, you can imply those messages much more subtly, much more nuanced messages in terms of the way you ask questions, insightful questions like the number of rough sleepers in Birmingham at any one point in time, whatever that number happens to be. You would demonstrate your knowledge, your care about that sector, and you may need to demonstrate that with funding charity, the Shore Trust, whatever it happens to be, by asking really insightful questions based on respected data in that sector, which can be anything, to mean anything to anyone. But if by getting into that, speaking that language, if you like, then that can demonstrate your credibility and your knowledge and care about that sector. That's kind of the point, insightful questions. Is knowledge power? Richard Nixon certainly thought so, but actually it's about having the right knowledge and using it at the right time. That's where real power is, and knowing what outcome you want, not just knowing what the opposition party is doing, but actually just getting you to the right, what do you need? Also, never forget, you actually have the power. We'll talk about this more in Masterclass number 6, negotiation and closing. You have entitlements in the relationship as well. So never be afraid to say no. No, you may want to think, kind of slightly frame or position no, it's still no. You may want to come up with an alternative way of doing something. And that in itself is a negotiation. Negotiation is not all about price. It can be service delivery, it can be all sorts of things around, but it's normally around resources. So you have the right to say no. Understand there might be an implication of you saying no. So you might want to be more creative or diplomatic by saying, giving a viable alternative that you can both sign up to. So the right knowledge is the right, applied in the right way. That's power. Okay, so I want to talk about tonality here. We were going back to that Meridian chart earlier on. Only 7% of the words that are spoken here today by us all form part of the communication. The rest of it is your tonality, your body language, what are called non-verbal clues. So this is a very basic example, and I just want to give, but it is incredibly important, especially as we're all working on video. If you're face-to-face, you can pick up so many more clues, chemistry as I call it. You can pick up so many more clues, but we're on video, and we're going to be on video for some time to come. Some of us were talking about that previously. So here's a straightforward sentence. I did not say he bought a new laptop. Okay, so depending on the words that you emphasize and the way you emphasize those words, it can mean completely different things. And I've used a very basic example, which is inoffensive, but you could apply it to your own words. So here we go. So it's, I did not say he bought a new laptop. It could have been someone else that said that, but I didn't say it. I did not say it. He bought a new laptop. That means more or less the same thing, but you've emphasized it. I did not say he bought a new laptop. I didn't say it at all. I'm not saying anyone else said it either, but I certainly didn't say that. I did not say he bought a new laptop. I merely inferred it. It's just it was a guess. No guessing. Did not say he bought a new laptop. So it could have been someone else, anyone else, but it wasn't him. I did not say he bought a new laptop. He could have leased it, rented it, whatever it might be. But the emphasis is on different words, and it creates a totally different. Anyway, I'm not going to go through all the end of it, but you get now emphasizing the right words in the right way. You can deliver that line 75 different times, and it has different meanings. But think of it in your world around empowering yourself with certain messages to get the right outcomes for you and your organization. So this will take some thinking about, but I wanted to get the message across that it's about tonality. There's much more to it than just the words themselves. I'm not going to go through this example because no time. So identifying customer needs. Okay, we talked about that value stack. We've done it a few times, and it's a really big level of understanding for me. So we talked about, do you remember in Masterclass number 1, value proposition, differentiating ourselves. Well, we can differentiate our products and services, but also we can differentiate ourselves as being subject matter experts at the same time. Now, given there's 7.3 billion people on the planet, and you are one of them, and you are absolutely unique, and you can make the difference between making your organization a success or your competitor's organization as a success if you move there. That's the you difference. So you can do that by asking some simple questions, such as you're going to meet, I don't know, Pinsent Masons. I talk about them a lot. I don't know any of the partners down there, but I do know they spend lots of money on corporate social responsibility, not nearly as much as you'd hope, but they do. So if you're with a partner at Pinsent Masons, and what's the scope of your CSR, what really means something, that's quite a basic question. It's not an unreasonable question, but it's quite a basic one, and it's not going to set you apart from your competitors. Whereas you can ask, well, when are you thinking of doing this? Is it next financial year? Is it this year? When is it? That brings you more information, more intelligence, shows that you're really thinking about their project and what it means to them. What's the budget? How much are we talking about? Now, we're in UK, and for some reason, we hate talking about money. We hate asking for money. I'm being pejorative here, but I'm probably right more than I'm wrong. There are instances. You go to New York, They have no problem asking for money there. I don't know why that is, but just be aware of it. Some people are a little uncomfortable in asking for money. So just kind of bear that in mind. Okay, so a way of differentiating yourself from the people on the right hand side of that pyramid, the Me Too's, the pack, if you like, is to ask a more insightful question of, Mr. Customer, why are you doing this? Why now? And you could uncover something like a major client of us. This has happened. A major client of ours, wife's just given birth to a baby, and it's got some kind of congenital heart disease, and all of a sudden, what wasn't on the agenda or in the company's psyche yesterday is all of a sudden on the agenda today. So we want to invest in a local organization that's going to research this terrible subject matter. And that can be an overnight process. So asking a simple question like, why are you doing this? Why now? Why not last week? Could uncover some really, now we have to be it's a very powerful skill to be able to ask those questions and get factual answers. And if you're not very good at asking that question, if you somehow hesitate, you won't get the answer. They'll fob you off. They'll decline to answer that question, or they'll say, I don't know, but it's the same outcome. You won't get the answer to the question. So you've got to be confident in yourself in asking these questions. And you have every right. In fact, I would argue it's more than a right, it's actually a responsibility to know why you're engaging, why they're interested in doing that. And then drill down below that. Remember, it's conversation, it's not interrogation. So why are you doing that? Monetize the problem. It's difficult if you're fundraising, but monetize the problem. Is there some sort of return on investment for their budget versus how much good they're giving in the community? So some organizations, their responsibility is just to spend money in the community. So if you can report back to them, you spent that amount of money on these, you've taken this many people off the streets, or you've designed a magnificent show home, and they were able to achieve a better asking price. The developer was able to achieve a better asking price because I asked the right questions and I designed the right solution for them. That's an incredibly powerful skill that will set you apart from the rest. And also another question which will set you apart from the rest is, apart from you, Mr. Customer, who else in this gigantic organization do I need to talk to about, can I get another view from? Now, some people will get really uncomfortable. You bring in someone else up from the same organization to have a similar conversation. So if you ask it like you're entitled, act as if. If you ask it like you're entitled, you won't get any pushback. You'll say, oh yes, you should go and get the point of view from our finance director. I'll tell you where this happens an awful lot, and it's in technology, because technology affects everybody in the business. 99% of the time it's invisible. We don't even need to think about it. I never think about the Apple data center or the O2 data center where my calls go through. I never think about it. It's invisible, and the only time I care about it is when it's no longer available to me and the network's down, etc. So, but the point is, who else do I need to go and talk to? And we'll learn more about that next time, which is in pursuit strategy. Okay, right. Now, here's what can set you apart from almost everyone else, is when you actually care and show you that you care about the person sat opposite you. And that may sound like bleeding obvious. You'd be amazed at how many people, they probably do care, but they never ask. And so I actually put this out in a blog when the pandemic first started, so close on a year ago. You know, how do you suggest that you know, what's the key question that you ask your customers? And Jane, another Jane, came back with, I ask them how they are. And somebody responded to Jane's question. They said, thank you for asking. You know, you're the first person to actually ask that. Even people in their own company, you know, bear in mind, we're going through a world-changing situation. Humanity is not at risk necessarily, but there's a massive, massive change that it's going through. To ask a question, such a basic question of, how are you? How are your family coping? Are you safe from that? All of, you know, what's that saying? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think that's always been true, but it's even truer today than it was this time last year. So demonstrating that empathy, it should be a no-brainer, but unfortunately it's not a no-brainer. You have to ask it. Okay, so moving past that is, what does great look like to the board? So obviously you want a great outcome from your investment. And I would argue, even in a charitable instance, they are investing still. They're investing in their community for a specific reason. So what does a great return on investment look like to the board? Now, that is definitely an open question, and they may not even know the answer to that. But what you've done is you've offered a bit of insight that to get this money awarded to you, you need to know, first of all, you can deliver on that. We'll go back to, if there's one thing worse than no business, it's bad business. So we want to make sure that we can deliver what the board is expecting. Is it reasonable? Is it unreasonable? But it might just give us some gold dust. So what does it look like to the board? You'll get really important. And here's, do you remember we talked about tips? What are the things that can affect your business and your customers' business? Those things that are going on out there in the ether. It's trends, implications, possibilities, solutions. So if you can think about your customer's business in that way, if you're dealing with investment banks, then Tesla going up 730% this year. Some of your banks will care very greatly about that. If you talk to them about GameStop, about number of amateur day traders that were burnt by that stock, you can talk about stuff that's relevant to their business. It sort of suggests that you're worthy. If you talk about the 225 million newcomers to middle classness in China, that kind of puts you in a certain marketplace that you can talk about all these things. If you can talk about the attainment gap in primary schools between independent schools and state schools, if you can talk to that data again with gravitas, with accuracy, you can have really, really high quality conversations there. And then bringing a gift. Bringing a gift is telling someone something about their business or their organization that they don't already know. And that's a really big subject. I'm not going to go there, but the notion of bringing a gift, which is not bringing a bottle of wine as some sort of thank you or bung. It's about having done the research on the organization and being able to take it from down there and represent it to the chief financial officer or the principal of the college or whatever it happens to be. Tell them something about their business, give them some insight. Now, those of you that have seen me analyze that Peaky Blinders clip, Thomas Shelby analyzed Billy Kimber's business, and he found out that one of the partners was skimming, they were stealing money. That was insight. That was something that Billy Kimber didn't know. That would be an example of bringing a gift. Okay. Now, I'm not suggesting you're going to put a stash of money on the table, but you are metaphorically by bringing that insight. Okay, listening. Yeah, we've already talked about that. This is one of the ones I'm just going to whiz through because we've already done it. Okay. Right. Here we go. Right. So a bit of interaction, if we could. Observation. Someone come off of mute. Tell me what you think is going on here. Abby, you've been silent.
She just looks like she's listening to me, to be honest, and about to take some notes.
Okay. Tell me some more. Why do you think she's listening?
Because in terms of her eye contact, she's making quite a lot of eye contact with the person. and she's got like a pad and pen, like she's prepared to take notes to whatever they're saying, and she's not the one talking, so her mouth is closed.
Okay, so that's a great observation. Would you say she looks bored?
No, I'd say she looks interested.
Engaged?
Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Sorry?
That's why we're here, right? So, Barry, can I ask you, what are your thoughts?
Probably not dissimilar from Abby, to be honest with you. I mean, the person looks interested, intrigued by what the other individual's saying. Yeah, I do note the pen as well. So she's came prepared to take notes. So that says to me that someone's actually engaging with what that person's got to say, and thinks it's important enough to write it down. So that's what I see when I see that. I don't see any negativity or, you know, like she doesn't look bored to me. She looks like she would be interested in whatever this person has to say.
Yeah, good.
But I think she could be daydreaming as well. She can be staring at the guy, but her mind is not there because her eyes are just staring. And I don't know, I feel she's not making any expressions, smiling, or I felt she's staring into blank.
The vibe I get is that, oh, is there some interference? Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. The vibe I get, it seems like it's sort of interview situation, like, and I get, she seems to be looking intently, and I feel like from experience as well in interview situations, it can be quite an intimidating process. So maybe it's kind of like testing him to see if he's gonna slip up, make some mistakes. I don't know, but it does kind of look like an interview to me. But yeah,
those are all great observations. Thank you very much for getting involved in that. So I think it's fairly relaxed, but we know it's quite formal. There's some collars going on there, not jeans and t-shirts. There's a degree of formality there. The gentleman has got his jacket on, which suggests, and the person is opposite, the woman opposite hasn't got a jacket on, so that would suggest she's in the pound seat. We'll learn more about the pound seat. She's in some form of, should we say, authority. She's leaning in to the conversation, which is fully engaged. We talked on Monday night, for those that were online, about the power of that on video in particular, when you've got limited other opportunities to express how you're feeling about something. So she's engaged. There's thoughtfulness. There's a famous image of Socrates, I think, which is sitting on the rock going like this. So in The Great Philosopher, so body position, leaning in, we've talked about that. The hand position, thoughtful, pen in hand, just in case he says something interesting enough to write down. The head tilt. The head tilt of the person. So M, and then I can't remember why I wrote M, but anyway, so the tilt of the head is really important, not necessarily on which side, but if you're sat bolt upright like this, you'll find this on politicians being interviewed. They'll sit bolt upright and they'll have their hands clasped on the desk in front of them because they don't want to give anything away. And their PR people, their communications people will say, you know, really control your body language, which I feel is really inauthentic, but you know, this is the world we live in sometimes. So she's not overly controlling her body language. She's leaning slightly to one side, and it's an unconscious thing until I tell you about it, and then you'll realize exactly what your head's doing. But she's leaning to one side, and that's an enhanced level of interest. We don't know why there's an enhanced level of interest. Could be many things going on there, but if they're sat bolt upright, really trying to control there, then it's very hard to tell whether there's any interest or not. but there isn't there she's sliced. So that's an enhanced level of interest. Okay, so the reason I put this up there is because the person on the left, some of you might recognize that scene. You know, have you ever heard that phrase, there's more psychopaths in the boardroom than there are in prison? You ever heard that? I can tell you now, I'm working on Canary Wharf. Most of them are there. The other 49% are fine, but there's plenty of psychopaths. To me, G, sorry to disappoint you, you're going to have to cope with a few of these people when you come across them. But actually, if you can learn to cope with them, you will master those accounts. They tend to be more senior, not at the very top, tend to be very charming at the very top in the C-suite. The one level down where they're all fighting to get in the C-suite, it tends to be where, you know, some nastiness can occur. So in the scene, he says, here's Johnny, not honey, I'm home, as most people think. Here's Johnny. And then Shelley Duvall, the woman on the right-hand side, scared to death. Now, my Johnny was a guy called Frank, who was an accountant working for a big Swiss-American bank based in New York. And he scared most people to death. He was a pretty scary character. And he very rarely looked at you. And this was just something I had to cope with. When you were having a meeting with him, the longest meeting I ever had, well, in his office, was about 8 minutes, very low attention span. And he was doing his email the whole time. And I just couldn't do anything about that. But I was getting the answers that I needed. So I would have loved for him to sat down and be really nice to me for half an hour, but that would have been my ego. What I actually needed was just permission to win some business for their networking equipment. I just wanted his approval. That's all I wanted. I knew in advance he always wanted another 1%. So we called that in the budget line the Frank number, because we knew whatever price we negotiated with procurement, when we went to see Frank to get the number signed off, he always wanted a bit more. So we had to leave enough in the budget to do that. And that's about researching the client and all the rest of it. So anyway, that was my Johnny, Frank. And I got, again, this is about communications. It was very hard to get a meeting with him. So what I did in the end, I had quite a nice car at the time. When I knew he was going to be in London, and I would save him the $100 trip to Heathrow, and I would offer to his assistant, I'll take Frank to the airport. Now, you may not get away with that these days in terms of security, and all, at least I hope you wouldn't. But anyway, that was an example of, I know he's going to the airport. He's going to need a driver. If I'm sat next to him, I've got an hour and a half of quality time. In reality, he was on his phone most of the time, but I did get 9 or 10 minutes I wouldn't otherwise have got. But that was an example of, you know, putting myself out to get me that quality time, that bit of insight and research into a big client, and get me further ahead than my competitors. That was just an example. And the other example, so focused, low amount of emotional quotient, very, very task focused. You may have other words to describe people like that, but anyway, I'm being polite. Or there's a guy called John. John was very methodical, and the polite way would have been loquacious, which means, you know, using 100 words where only 10 would have done. But we all know people like that, but that's the way they communicate, and we have to work with that. The question you're always asking yourself is this taking, am I getting the right return on my investment of time, which you're entitled to do, and is this taking me in the right direction? Okay, okay, right. Mirroring, okay. So again, this is communication skills. So mirroring is non-verbal behavior. There's no speech going on. You may want to, this is quite a famous scene. It's Harpo Marx on the left and Lucille Ball on the right-hand side, probably 1950s, still black and white, comedy series. And they do a mirror. There's no mirror there, but they do this thing for 2 or 3 minutes, just mimicking each other's actions in time. It's an incredible bit of choreography, and you may want to YouTube this afterwards. But it's an imitation of speech or patterns or the attitude of someone else. It can often occur in social situations, particularly in the company of close friends, or when you're on a date. So if you want to know how your date's going, is your opposite number, are they mirroring your actions? And often it's unconscious. You don't even realize you're doing it. But it'd be interesting if you think back to last time you were on a date or similar social situation, was that occurring? Or the next time you're going out or something like that, is mirroring occurring? It's important, and it's a measure of how well it's going or not. Okay, so so here's an example of mirroring in a social situation, a bit more up to date, in that raised cups of coffee is putting a barrier between two people. So there is a sort of a social construct of a barrier there. They're sat on the same sofa, they're quite close. You can see what's going on there. The reason it's important, by the way, it's an unconscious reason, is mirroring establishes an unconscious rapport between the parties. And the reason that's important is because it makes the client feel at ease. This is all going on at the unconscious level. It makes the client feel at ease, more comfortable with you. And when you get to that stage, if you can get there and stay there early on, establishing rapport, and this is why it's really important for salespeople to be able to do this, or fundraisers to establish this really early on, is because you get more great information. Communication flow, we've done that. It's almost always non-verbal. The mirroring thing is non-verbal, even to the point of you both take a sip of your cup of tea at the same time and put it back down. You can often test whether your opposite person is mirroring you by taking a sip from your tea when you're not even after one. You're just kind of testing what's going on. It's really interesting to observe, but it can be verbal too. So if I was, I did it to Joseph last time, I'm conscious we've got 4 minutes left, so I'm trying to wrap up really quickly. But if I was to phone up Abby, well, I'm not going to Abby, but if I was to phone up Abby right now, and Abby picks up her phone, she goes, what is it? What is it? I would know. I couldn't be no, Abby never answers the phone like that, I'm sure. I'm guessing not. But if Abby answers the phone like that and I go, oh, hi, Abby. Hi, how are you? How's the weather? Da, 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 da. I'm the exact opposite of how Abby's answered the phone. If she picks up the phone and goes, what do you want? I would have to, if I want to get through that and get to the point of communicating with Abby, I would have to mirror that intensity, shall we say, around language. I would have to go, Abby, it's Keith, there's a bit of a cold call. Have you got 30 seconds? Trying to interrupt that pattern. And Abby will say, because Abby's a nice person, Abby will say, yeah, all right, give me 30 seconds. And then we got, but I've mirrored. So I've respected and understood what's going on there, and we're able to continue. Conversely, if Abby picked up the phone in a very relaxed manner and polite manner, which I'm sure happens most of the time, then I would mirror that way. That's all I've got to say about that. Okay, so don't overdo it. If you're in person and you're constantly mirroring what the other person, you know, that can be stalkerish, and I don't want to make, but don't overdo it, because you know it's gonna feel weird, right? Right. So listen, we talked about 75-25 or 60-40 on occasion. You're trying to identify where their pain is. It's an acronym. Can't remember what it's for, but anyway, pain. Why are they going to spend money? Why are they going to spend money with you? Whether it's a gym membership or a great big outsourcing deal, why are they going to spend money? Can you solve their problem? Again, this is communication. Can you? You can't always understand if you can't, but try and understand that earlier on in the conversation rather than at the very last minute, like that 38-minute phone call that Empower used to have. If you remember that, you want to get that no early, politely disengage, move on to the next call, respect their time. Okay, right. Monetize that pain. We've already talked about that. Detect buying signals. We'll talk about this fully in negotiating close, which is a couple of masterclasses time. Can you delight the customer So not just deliver, but actually delight. And you've got a customer there for the long term. We'll talk about that in maximizing, and then asking for the order, actually asking, being audacious, or having the temerity to ask for the order sets you apart from your competition. We've done that, we've done that. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Now, so listen with an intent to understand, rapport, mirroring, all of that helps aid communication flow. Process the information, looking up and left means you're processing, you're thinking about what they've said. It pays a silent compliment to the other side as well. The ratio, we've already talked about that. And when you're speaking, make sure you're improving the silence. Make sure what you're saying is valuable in the context of that person or that conversation. Mirroring, we talked about that. Silence, have not had time to go through silence. And actually we're going to run out of, but the Rebecca thing, we were getting lots of value about that. So what I'm going to, and don't interrupt your customer, whatever you do, just don't do that, because that I find really irritating, and I'm sure others do as well. And certainly no guessing. Okay, so I'm going to sort of draw this to a bit of a close. But there is a video I wanted to point you to, which I think I'll do offline and send you a separate link to show how some really good communication is taking place, and I'll analyze it. It's not Peaky Blinders. Actually, if anyone knows Breaking Bad, which is streets ahead, the most brilliant TV series of all time. And if anyone disagrees, I'll see you outside, so to speak. But it is absolutely brilliant TV. And if you were a middle-aged bloke looking at down the barrel of whatever Walter was looking down the barrel of, you would agree to. So anyway, so I might do that offline and send you a link to that separately. But active listening, conversation, not interrogation. Where's the customer's pain? Why will they spend money? And also, why will they spend it with you? Can you actually solve their problem? Take that gift of insight. Tell them something about their business that they don't already know. Maybe they've got an exposure of some kind. Maybe they're not getting the best return on IT. Monetize that problem. How much is it costing them not to do what you need to do? No guessing. Quick story, and then we're definitely out of here. The client of mine, Dennis, who was the chief information officer for a big retail bank in the city of London, not Canary Wharf. I didn't know this until I've been working with him for a couple of years, but I remember going back to his first meeting I ever had with him. His assistant came in. I didn't know at the time, but it was a fairly short amount of time. Told him, Dennis, boss needs to see you upstairs. And because I asked him once over lunch, can you remember why she came in? And he said, Keith, every new meeting, I get the assistant to come in after 7 minutes to say that the boss needs to see me. If the meeting's going well, if I'm getting value out of it, I'll tell her, don't worry, I'll go up and see after this meeting. If it's not going well, if I'm bored, in other words, I'll stop the meeting there and then say, Keith, terrible shame, but you know what the boss is like, I've got to go up and see him. That was his excuse to shut the meeting down. And that's why now we can all say, well, that's really rude. Well, I'll tell you what, if they're spending millions of pounds a year with you or whatever it is, that kind of goes with the territory. But that's why you've got to ask great questions early, establish rapport, mirroring, identify pain, all of that. Do your research early so that you can tell them you are differentiating yourself versus your competitors. Create an early impact and sustain it from there. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, I've already talked about that. Okay, right. Just very last minute. Next Monday evening, free of charge, open to all, not just anyone on here. I'm doing a LinkedIn Brilliant Basics thing. I'm recruiting for the next cohort. So if you have sort of enjoyed what you've learned about up until now, so a few nodding heads, that's encouraging, then I'd be really grateful if you could tell other people about this. or support any posts when I put them out on LinkedIn about this. I'll be really grateful for that. And I'm running another introduction to sales. Some of you already been on that as a precursor on the 22nd of February. So if you've got other colleagues that might be interested in that, it would be fantastic if you could signpost them to that. Next week, we're going to talk about pursuit strategy. If you've got any questions, can you fire them on email and I'll do another follow-up. I'm happy to answer. We can go anywhere you want with that. And I'll also, if I may, I'm going to send you a survey. We're just over halfway through now. It'll only take 5 minutes to fill out. I'd be really grateful if you could give me, it's anonymous, but there's only 8 of us here, so it won't take a genius to figure out who's saying what. But anyway, I'd be really grateful for some constructive feedback. What do you want more of, less of, what stood out for you, etc. I'd be grateful if you could give me the courtesy of a response on that, and then you can follow me, etc. I'll send you a link to this recording just in case, and I'll do by a separate recording the Breaking Bad bit, some takeaways. We've done that. Thank you very much. Anything else? Keith at salesmarble.co.uk, and we'll go from there. But listen, thank you for your attention. 5 minutes over, I do apologise, but have a brilliant rest of the evening, and I really look forward to seeing you again same time next week. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Keith. Bye.
Bye.
Very welcome. Take care, everyone. All the best.
Thanks, Keith. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Joseph. Take care. I'm out of here. Or unless you wanted to ask a quick question.
No, just goodbye. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, Joseph.
Oh, by the way, just very quickly, Breaking Bad was fantastic, but I got to about the 3rd series and it started getting really dark. And I found it quite disturbing, and actually never got past first couple of episodes. I might re-pick it up again, but it did get very dark, and I found it a little bit disturbing. So
Walter went on what I can only regard as mad.
Yeah.
A really dark side, which for me, I don't want to say and sour grape, but it reminded me of sour grapes of my first marriage. Well, I won't go anywhere, but I thought maybe this is just a stage of life I was at, but I thought, God, this is really interesting. I really want to explore what's going on here. And let's leave the conversation there, but I totally get where you're coming from on that.
Brilliant.
All right.
Thanks, Keith. Take care.